Good afternoon and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's session. And today we have Dr. Tam Cummings. She's with us every month and we're so glad she's back with us today. And this is going to be kind of an Ask Tam session today. So I hope you have your questions ready for her. But before we get to that, let me introduce Candace Ramos with Vitas Healthcare, and she's going to tell you a little bit about Vitas, who we're so grateful because they sponsored this session today. Candace.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So since this is an Ask the Tam session, I'm going to ask you guys some questions for you to think about before you get started, and maybe hopefully trigger some thoughts about the next conversation of hospice care. So, is your loved one having trouble communicating or speaking? Are they spending most of the time of the day in a bed or a chair? Are they confused and/or spending more time sleeping? Are they unable to walk, get dressed, or bathe without maximum assistance? Are they incontinent of bowel and bladder? Are they having difficulty swallowing or refusing to eat? In the last 6 months, have they visited the emergency room, been hospitalized, lost weight intentionally, or had a fall with injury? If you answered yes to any of these questions, your loved one may be eligible for Vitas Hospice services. Vitas prides ourselves in the hospice care that we have provided for over 40 years. We're in 14 states across the United States, and we're available 24/7. So if you're interested in learning more about Vitas, you can go to our website, www.vitas.com.
Thank you so much, Candace.
Thank you.
Session this morning. I don't know if any of you saw it, but I wasn't able to listen to it, but I'm glad. I think it was wonderful.
Thanks, you. Candace. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. All right, let me tell you just a little bit about Dr. Tam Cummings before we get started with Ask Dr. Tam. So Tam Cummings founded her company in 2009 with the mission of inspire, educate, and empower dementia caregivers. Now her professional gerontological practice in the Texas Hill Country is recognized as one of the leading educators of dementia caregivers and program design for dementia care nationally. Tam, so glad you're with us today.
Hi, Glenda. I appreciate the extra accent on Texas Hill Country.
Hill Country. That's
I know
what
you did
it's
that
all about.
Hill Country. I thought we did it all bounce like we did on the bus.
Absolutely. I have a letter that you wanted me to read. Give me a little bit of our participants today, a background on this letter that I'm going to read.
The letter actually came to me from a friend of mine who's a dementia medication expert in Florida. And she sent me the letter from one of her patients. And I was I cried. And Glenda, I did try not to get emotional about what I do, but I literally cried. And I asked Catherine, could we get permission to publish the letter? Because for me, it gave such a beautiful insight as to what is going on with your loved one before you may even realize what's happening with them on the inside. I was just struck by the nuances of what she was able to understand of what was going on around her. So I asked Glenda to read it because she's a better reader. Hill Country.
Hill Country, Hill Country. And also Minerva has put the link to this letter on Tam's website also in the chat box, and that chat box remains open. So you can type a question in there anytime you have one. So let me read this letter, and it touched me also. This is a letter written by S.R. When things feel overwhelming, remember, one thought at a time, one task at a time, one day at a time. About 6 months ago, the bottom fell out of my world. I went from an intelligent, functioning person to someone I don't recognize. I look in the mirror and see the same face, but I feel lost and afraid. I struggle with the simplest tasks, like finding the exercise room. Then, just for a second, there will be a moment of clarity. Those are the hardest because I realize how my life has changed. I can't heal from this nightmare. I don't want to be a burden on my family, especially my son. He is my rock. But when I call him, I hear the frustration in his voice. When I see him, there is a hint of anger that crosses his face just for a moment. When he has to explain the easiest task for the 10th time, it is tiring. I know he loves me, but he's also struggling with our new reality. I participate in the activities, do crossword and word search puzzles, trying to hold on to what little sanity I have left. Oh, how I wish I could turn back time to when things were normal for me. At the end of the day, I return to my room feeling lost, lonely, and afraid. I start to cry, sometimes for hours. I really love my care community and the friends I have made, but I hate who I have become and fear what my future holds for me. Having managed an adult day program for over 12 years, I witnessed the progression of people with dementia and Parkinson-like syndrome, so the reality of what is in store for me is so frightening. When I look around, I do realize just how lucky I really am. I can speak clearly and walk. There are so many here that can't. I just wish there was someone here I could talk with about my fears. Very touching, very touching.
Oh, it just made me cry again. Oh, goodness. Glenda, part of my training and part of or just really how we've been taught is that people with dementia aren't really aware of what's going on with them, that the brain doesn't recognize it's damaged. We even have a name for that. And that's why when the disease progresses, they get angry when you point out something that they're doing wrong because they don't realize they've done anything wrong, and they don't understand why you're yelling at them for not picking that thing up that's right in front of them, and you don't understand they literally can't see it.
Yeah.
But when I see that letter, when I hear that letter again, it impacts me the same way it did the very first time. I'm horrified at the terror the people that you love lived with for a period of time. I know I told you before, Glenda, about an old rancher that I saw. And in the end, when I told him he had tested positive for dementia, he cried because he thought he was going crazy. And he wasn't going crazy. He was literally losing his brain to a disease. But you hear in her things that I've been taught the person with dementia doesn't really know. And maybe that's part of teaching to make us all feel better. But you hear in her how she still has enough function to pick up a subtle, fast flash of anger across her son's face. And the son is not actually angry at her. He's angry at the disease. He's frustrated that he's having to answer the same question again and again. And the nurse practitioner told me he's just an absolute wonderful, wonderful child. But still, she sees more and recognizes more for this period of time than we've been taught. And so I wondered if that was something, Glenda, that had come across your desk in your profession or in the people that you know, or anybody else out there. Were you as aware of what your loved one was experiencing during this time? And I think from talking to the nurse practitioner, this person is in stage 4 of the disease, earlier in the disease. Normally I don't see people until stage 5 or 6 or 7. But that was the reason for reading that, and to make me cry.
I didn't mean to make you cry.
It did. Made me cry.
But it made me tear up also, though. And the question about when does the person with dementia not know anymore? Because we've made some assumptions. I think you and I have talked about this. We've made some assumptions about maybe when that happens, but we don't have any hard data to prove any of that, do we?
You would simply have to go on at present that, if a person's in stage 5 of the disease, which is when they're really beginning to repeat information and you're really beginning to notice that this can no longer be ignored. They're a danger when they're driving. They don't understand their medicine. They're not doing anything on purpose. But it looks like they are. This week I saw a nurse who was one of the children of the family I was meeting with, and she kept going, but he just keeps pretending he doesn't know. And I'm like, okay, nurse, he doesn't know. He's not pretending anything. He doesn't know. He has brain
Right.
damage.
Right.
And so we know at the beginning of stage 5, this person's lost half a pound of brain tissue, but they can still function to the point that they fool professionals, not intentionally, but they do. And then we know in stage 6, the person is now estimated to have lost half a pound to a pound to a pound and a half of brain tissue. They have the equivalency of a 4-year-old to a 2-year-old. So you would assume they really don't fully have the understanding of what's happening to them. But does that mean there are not pockets or
Yeah.
flashes or moments? Glenda, it's been estimated that you and I dream during the night and we wake up thinking we dreamed all night long. This dream made us toss and turn all night long. And in reality, our dreams are just flashes. They last for most of them less than 30 to 45 seconds. But our brain processes information so quickly that I've met family members, I've met people with dementia that even very advanced, there's suddenly a flash in a moment of recognition. And to me, sometimes I've seen a flash that is an, oh my God, flash of a recognition in the eyes, and then it's gone again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at stage 6, we're taught all dementias are the same due to the amount of brain damage. So I think it would be somewhere in stage 5 where the person would really no longer have enough brain tissue and connectivity to fully understand and appreciate what's going on around them.
Well, and you having said that then, and you're talking about staging now. And so that is one of the reasons in my mind why it's so important to do that staging as you move through the process of the disease. So at least you'll have an inkling of what's happening to that person and to what they are aware of and what maybe not aware of. I know my friend that I've talked to you about before, we played cards with her yesterday. She's been diagnosed a couple of years ago with Alzheimer's disease. She's having trouble working the shuffler, but she knows she has Alzheimer's disease because she'll say, oh yeah, this is just that silly disease getting in the way or whatever. And so I'm very careful about what I say in front of her because she's very aware. But staging is just critical, I would think.
Well, I think it's critical, but then to go back to the nurse, the nurse kept saying, but he can read. No, he may be reading words, but you and I learned to read words, Glenda, and then we learned comprehension.
Right.
What those words all put together actually meant. And suddenly See Dick Run made sense to us.
Right.
Your person with dementia may be reading words, but it doesn't mean they're comprehending them. But if a family member doesn't understand the disease, it's easy for them to think, see, he's reading, therefore this other stuff he's doing, he's faking. And what they're actually watching is brain damage all the way around. It's just that it makes you stop and wonder how frightening has their world been.
Yes.
And for how long.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't worry about that with my friend. She's still living alone, and I wonder how frightened she gets with no one there to, ask the question or whatever.
Well, I'm alone in the country this weekend or this week. And last night, right when I went to bed, and I live on a ranch out in the middle of nowhere, and I have my whole house is nothing but doors. And so you can get in if you want to. And I hear a bang. right when I've gone to bed. And then a little bit later, I hear another bang. And, you know, in the country, you're immediately going, okay, that's a this, that's a that, that just happened. Oh, I need to get up and see what that is. I mean, it's the same thing in your house, but it's very disconcerting to hear these bangs, but you and I can logically figure them out. But a person with dementia, do they sit up all night long thinking there's someone in that other room coming to get them? So it's,
Maybe.
I think their world is much more frightening than we realize. And I think that they're more aware of our frowns and grimaces and rolling of the eyes and just the 1,000 little tiny subtle movements of the face that you and I do when we're just exhausted and annoyed.
Yeah.
I never have really met a bad caregiver. I've just met caregivers that didn't understand what was happening to their loved one and that this wasn't purposeful behavior. This was brain damage they were witnessing. And your person's vascular dementia is much different than my person's Alzheimer's, which is much different than our friend's person's Lewy body. So each of these dementias is different in its presentation because of how it's moving through the brain, what its causation is. And on top of that, you mix in the person's age, education, socialization, even their socioeconomic background plays an effect into how the presentation with dementia is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay. We've given a little background here. Do any of you on the call today, and this should be a pretty open forum. We don't have a huge group with us today, and that's probably pretty good since we're just asking questions. So does anyone have a question for Tam about your personal situation, the person you're caring for, what you're experiencing right now, anything having to do with dementia that Tam might be able to help you with? You can unmute your phone, and I see Natalie has already done that. Natalie, go ahead.
I went ahead and wrote down my question. So
Good.
my mom, thank you for this. This is, I mean, I really appreciate you for this. My mom was diagnosed with vascular dementia about a year ago. Her neurologist put her on Namenda, but recently her primary care physician, because as you were saying, they have a lot of fears and anxieties. Her primary care physician put her on something called buspirone hydrochloride. It's supposed to be an anti-anxiety medicine. It's very low dose, 5 milligrams is needed. But just recently I noticed she's had more like the Capgras syndrome and sensitivity, vivid dreams. Do you feel like that's something that interacts with Namenda negatively? Should we take her off of that? I just not sure. Or is it just the dementia progressing?
When you talk about Capgras syndrome, what is it that you're referring to?
Well, I read that that was something where, like, for instance, recently, if my dad disagrees with her, he's the primary caregiver that's living with her. If he disagrees with her about something, or I guess if he has that look of frustration or something, then she gets very sensitive and says that he's not her husband, that she doesn't know who he is and he needs to get out and leave right away.
Yeah, that's not Capgras syndrome. That's
okay.
Progression of the dementia, and it actually means that her dementia is very progressed.
Okay.
So let's start with the vascular dementia. How was the diagnosis made? Was she given a number of tests? Was she documented as having a series of strokes? Did they do an MRI?
They did an MRI only, and from that, the neurologist looked at it and said that that's what she had. And when she was younger, like in her 50s, she did have a stroke, or one of those
Okay.
a TIA.
Okay, well, she's at this point, you would assume that there's been multiple TIAs, and that once that process started, she would also now have Alzheimer's dementia as well. And how old is she?
She's 82.
82. So at this point, you would assume that she has multi-infarct vascular dementia, which is written as MIVD, plus DAT, which is dementia of the Alzheimer's type. And those two together would be a mixed dementia. And that would make sense given the length of time since she began to have that first documented stroke. The
Mhm.
Namenda, she stays on for the remainder of her life. Namenda stops the brain from building up too much glutamate. And because of damage from these dementias, your mother's blood-brain barrier is not able to properly clean and clear the brain at night. So Namenda stops her brain from dying from glutamate, being overwhelmed by glutamate. The other one is for anxiety. It is normal for people, especially people with vascular dementia, to have a higher level of anxiety, but it's also common for people with dementia to have anxiety. And then the thinking that the husband is somebody else, that is her going backwards in time. So she's at a point in time where if I were to chat with her for a few minutes and then ask her what year she thinks it is, the year that she tells me it is, that also tells me what age she thinks she is. And so if she thinks she's 30 years old, well, she's not married to that old man in there. And you and I, as females, have been programmed to call the police or call for help when there's danger in our house. So men who have dementia wake up, don't recognize their wives. Men have been trained to defend their territory, so they push that fake woman out of the house. You and I have been socialized to call for help or to call the police. So women who have dementia, who have husbands, it's not unusual that they call the police or report that. That's not Capgras syndrome. That's just a progression of the disease of not actually recognizing correctly what time, date, and where she really is in time. Did that
Okay,
make sense?
that makes a lot of sense. And that is, so that anti-anxiety medicine, do you think that's a bad idea?
Oh my God, no. Everybody with dementia should probably be correctly assessed for anxiety and depression.
Okay, and have you heard of, I'm sure you have, Aricept? Have you ever mixed that with Namenda? Is that the together, does that help with?
It
things
would
like that?
be, the purpose of Aricept, Rezidine, and Exelon is to allow a chemical reaction to continue to happen between brain cells that are already dying. The problem in our country is most people are not diagnosed until it's really much too late in the disease to start those medications. So starting Aricept, Rezidine, and Exelon towards the later part of the disease extends the dementia on average 2 to 3 years when the person has the most amount of brain damage and when the cost of their care becomes $200,000 to $300,000.
Oh, wow.
I know physicians who do not see any benefit to those medications because they're not put in place early enough. And I know physicians who don't use them. I know physicians who think they're great. So it depends on your person and what your person would tell you to do. And again, as Glenda said, it depends on what stage of the disease they're in.
Okay. That's
Thank you,
really,
Natalie. That was a great start to these questions. Karen put in the chat box, she's speaking about her mother. Can dementia be exacerbated from depression as she was given an antidepressant after 6 months after her father passed away? Seeing signs of dementia, but not sure as she's able to recognize people and complete ADLs. There is a loss for words, I have noticed.
So on the website, you can go down to Bristol's ADL tools. That's the ADL tool developed by the Bristol Medical School. It's made for dementia. The scales in the US currently, the CATSIS scale for ADLs, that was built, Glenda, in 1953 for normal aging, as was Lawton and Brody's IADL scale that was built in the 70s for normal aging. So dementia people have to be really declined before they even measure on these. So on the website, if you'll go down to tools, you can download the Bristol tool, and that'll give the doctor a much better understanding. Dementia is, or depression is frequently referred to as pseudo dementia, because a person with untreated depression will appear as though they have dementia Because when you have depression, you have trouble concentrating. And if you have trouble concentrating, you have trouble remembering things because you didn't concentrate. And so you end up looking and feeling like you have dementia. And especially if you're an older person or you've seen somebody with dementia, you start to think this is normal when in reality it's treated. So if a person went to the doctor, they would treat them, a good doctor would treat them first for depression and would give that medication time to work, and then they would test them for dementia. Now, the other thing is we know there is some connection between depression and Alzheimer's, and it is now thought that 10 years before the onset of Alzheimer's to where somebody would notice something is wrong, that there is actually untreated depression occurring in the person. So we know that treating depression and getting serotonin levels back to the correct balance in the brain is somehow very, very critical to a person not developing Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
Well, now I'm depressed.
Thank you
all-
so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was really long. I was like, I'm never going to get all of this, but I
Thank
gave it the
you.
old college try.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Guinevere, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I guess I'm gonna be long too. But anyway, my husband was diagnosed in 2017 with Alzheimer's. And then in 2018, they did the neurological testing all day, every day. And they said he has Alzheimer's, which he's had two brothers and a sister pass with Alzheimer's. He's still in denial. He worked in intelligence. He goes to the doctor. He doesn't want me to go with him. I have no clue what he's taken or anything like that. He fools everyone. And now he's rearranging the pictures on the wall. He's rearranging the cabinets. He's rearranging the pantry. He's rearranging my clothes in my closet.
Is he rearranging the furniture yet?
Yeah, even trying to cut it up. Yeah, stripping. Yeah,
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
So you have several things going on. You have somebody who is in military intelligence, and in spite of the jokes about really military intelligence, those are actually super, super smart people. And
Yes.
so you have something called cognitive reserve in place. And cognitive reserve means your loved one's IQ is much greater than the testing materials. So even with brain damage that the spouse can clearly see there's something wrong with my loved one, they can still pass all the tests because they were smarter than the test to begin with. So the IQ needed for the average testing tools for dementia is the IQ of 100. But what if your husband's IQ started out at 160? He has to actually have significant brain damage before he would ever test as having dementia. The paranoia is both personality driven, dementia driven, and oh my God, look at what he did for a living driven. He's been trained all his life to keep secrets. And as a military intelligence, he would, I mean, they have secrets they take to the grave. It is drilled
Yeah.
into them not to share information with anyone. He is not pretending. He is not faking. He is not acting like you're simply witnessing dementia in a person. And when you take somebody who has been exposed to the no telling what he knows category, anytime we see military folks who've been in that background, their dementia is scarier because their brain's got scary stuff in it. It's got material that he could never tell you about of horrible things that he knows and sees. And on top of that, dementia itself, any of the dementias can cause a person to be more paranoid just because they're not understanding everything. So here's a common example, Glenda. I go into someone's house and the person with dementia has the volume on the television turned up as loud as it will go, to the point that it's killing the spouse, and the spouse may literally kill the other person with the clicker. But the
He
reason
does that.
is even though they don't look sick, they don't understand the words that are being said on the television. It's speaking too quickly. They can't follow it. And the brain interprets that as, oh, they must not be speaking loudly enough. Then you add in a military man who's been exposed to, I mean, it doesn't matter what department you're with, at some point, something exploded near you and you were not wearing proper ear protection that they have now. So everything you're describing about him makes perfect sense to me. The problem is making sure that you're safe. And at some point, being able to go with him to the VA or being able to contact his doctors so that they have a better idea of what's going on. And again, filling out the Bristol ADL scale. Remember, they fool medical professionals, not intentionally. They fool them because the person sets off their social skills. And when you go to the VA is very, yes, sir, no, sir, this way, sir. And then they are the military, stand in line and wait. So everything that they're doing there, he's following the rules because he's been following those rules probably since he was in his 20s.
Yeah.
And you know, y'all were raised when children kept their mouth shut, don't bounce that ball in grandma's house. Everybody was yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. So you've got that sort of background, and then you've got how many years of the military of being sworn to secrecy, and then you've got somebody who is just really, really smart to begin with. So you've just got the trifecta of, I'm so sorry. This has got to be really, really incredibly hard for you.
Oh, it is. And one of the doctors told me he was highly intelligent. He told me that.
Well, we make jokes about military intelligence, but you can't be in military intelligence unless you are of a very high intelligence, because we have to be, you're entrusted with our deepest, most complex things. So all of that makes sense. And then on top of that, he would have had top secret or top secret or for your eyes only clearance. And so that paranoia makes perfect sense. In terms of brothers and sisters, I would wonder what your husband's cardiovascular system is like. Because it's just unusual to have that many people with Alzheimer's that are siblings in your age group, but really not unusual to have that many people with vascular dementia in that age group. So to have an entire set of siblings who have vascular dementia is actually much more common than a group of siblings that have Alzheimer's.
Okay, now I'm 14 years younger than he is, so that in itself is some difference.
So how
But,
old is he?
He just turned 85.
So he would have served in Vietnam. So there's got to be
Yes.
a toxic dementia going on there as well, where they may have completely missed, but he would have been sprayed with Agent Orange. I think they all were.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have that, and then you just have somebody who knows all of the nation's secrets, so they're naturally going to be more paranoid.
Yeah.
So where does that
Was he a
leave me?
smoker? Was
He
he a
was.
smoker?
He tried to hide it, but I found out that he was prior to me meeting him.
Yeah, you have to understand that the U.S. military sent soldiers off with 3 things: chocolate, Bob Hope, and cigarettes. And they encouraged them to use the cigarettes because in the middle of war, you're seeing horrible, horrible things. And so, you know, we make them get up and run 20 miles in the morning, and then we give them a pack of cigarettes as a reward.
Yeah.
So that what he would have been exposed to, given his age and the wars that he would have been part of, the stuff he's done that none of us know about, everything you're saying makes perfect sense. I think it's just critical that you get him properly staged, and then you find a way to get to the VA and go with him, or find a way to figure out what he's on. They send huge paperwork to everyone. So you're just going to have to be a detective. I'm sorry, not a deputy.
Kind of the same thing in Texas.
Well, you and Linda be my spies.
Guinevere, keep coming back. We're here for you. That's
You're
what
not getting
about
rid of
you.
me.
We're here for you.
I know that's right. I'm a survivor.
You are. Thank you so much for telling your story. Melody, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks, Glenda and Dr. Tam, and I'm grateful to be
Melody.
here. I could use some help or direction on the ending, as much as we can surmise any of our endings. My husband is 83. He was diagnosed officially 5 years ago with Alzheimer's. I believe he had it a couple of years at least before we got the diagnosis. His neurologist, a straight shooter, whom I highly respect, has said he expects my husband to live realistically another 2 years, give or take. Palliative care nurse practitioner said we're in for the long haul. And I couldn't get the stamina or the words out to ask what's the long haul. So I'm getting a little bit of conflicting notions about the ending. And I just, since dementia is a brain disease and we end our lives when our heart stops working, how does this usually happen? Absence of a fall or
No, the brain runs the body.
right?
People with Alzheimer's, the most common death is the person develops aspiration pneumonia. From aspiration pneumonia, sepsis or blood poisoning, from sepsis or blood poisoning, renal or kidney failure. And that is
Okay.
considered the classic death from Alzheimer's. But
Okay.
in most people with dementia, most people die in stage 5 or stage 6 from heart attack or stroke. Very few people live to actually being in stage 7 of the disease or the bedbound stage. So at 83, your husband has outlived his peer group by 14 years, meaning that other men born in his year group would have
39,
died-
40,
would have died
38.
at 60, 68, 69. So he would already be considered in gerontological terms, not the oldest old, but certainly an old man. As a person with a dementia, and you don't mention heart attack or heart surgery or stroke activity or any of those things, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, smoking, none of that.
Some of that. 2 strokes at age 80, back to back, small but full blown. And the first time he had ever been in the hospital overnight was when he had those strokes at age 80. And he does have high cholesterol, not overweight. Quit smoking
so-
decades ago.
Yeah, so he would have dementia of the Alzheimer's type, as well as multi-infarct vascular dementia, which leans him more towards having a massive stroke or heart attack because
Okay.
he's already physiologically shown that that's his predisposition.
Okay.
Then the next thing becomes what stage of the disease is he in? So
The
where did,
neurologist said, pardon me.
no, go
The
ahead.
neurologist uses more general terms than your staging. I took your staging in once and he said, well, I think it's moderate to severe now.
Okay, so
Okay.
moderate to severe meant that he jumped from stage 4 to stage 7. So let's go back and look at it again. Moderate is stage 4. Moderately severe is stage 5. The person still doesn't look sick. And to somebody,
Correct.
your husband, they would just think this is a regular stage, just a regular little old man who's just cute as he can be.
Correct.
Stage 6 people look sick. They're losing weight. They're constantly in motion. They're rapidly losing language. Stage 7 people are bedbound.
Okay.
So if the doctor said, I think he's now moderately severe, then that means stage 5 of the disease. And that's what you're shaking your head to on,
Yeah.
doesn't look sick yet, but still like that. So in stage 5 of the disease at this age, I think you're looking at 2 years or so.
Okay. That is very helpful. And one quick follow-up, if I may, and thank you for letting us be so personal with our own stories. when we go to the neurologist every 6 months, I want to know, because I'm managing resources, I'm trying to stay up with the game, and yet when you ask the questions and your loved one doesn't want to know, you feel pretty cruel. So how do you work through that?
Well,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it does. I can make an argument of why would you go to the neurologist anymore? Why would you go?
Right. So
It-
you just
it's
ask the hard
more-
questions and
It's one more doctor's trip he doesn't really have to take anymore. He has a terminal brain disease, and I think you and every caregiver just wants him to be comfortable and wishes this could be the last day and he could go to sleep tonight and just not wake up tomorrow. And I think that is a totally normal human response to watching somebody you love die so slowly. It's just horrifying. And then because y'all know who your loved one was, there's another added burden on top of you that we never talk about how you feel knowing how, if they had any idea what it was like right now, how they would feel, how horrified they would be. What would they do if they knew this? And so I think all of your feelings are normal. And I think asking about how much time does my loved one have is a normal thing to ask, because you have to prepare yourself emotionally and financially. It's one of the reasons seeing medication given so late in the disease is frustrating, because this is an expensive disease and not everybody has millions of dollars for care. And so if you don't have millions of dollars for care, how do you survive the disease that could easily kill you as well? And so part of it is learning as much as you can about the disease. Part of it is building a plan of care of how you're going to survive the disease. Part of it is having a real conversation about, honestly, this isn't the doctor's loved one. And when your loved one said, don't use any extraordinary measures to keep me alive, did they mean that includes any medicine that would make my brain, which is dying, work longer, which would make it draw out when I have the most brain damage? It would draw the disease out there, because those medicines were intended to be given early in the disease, and they're not. Namenda is different. We talked about Namenda earlier. Namenda has to stay till the end of life because it keeps the brain from dying. But the others, you have to make terrible decisions as a family without any information about it. So the doctor who said 2 years sounds better to me than the nurse practitioner who said, oh, you're in it for the long haul. That's a cruel thing to say.
yeah, I
And-
wish that hadn't been said too. And I bet he would.
the reality
would say
is
that too.
the brain runs the body. And if you stage him in stage 5, and remember, I grade harder than you do because it's not my loved one. But if you grade him in stage 5, and then every 2 months you grade again, starting where you left off, that's what Glenda's talking about, giving you an idea of how quickly the disease is progressing. But then you also know any one of us could drop dead at any time. And especially as you enter into those areas around his birthday, even with dementia, those seasons of life, those cycles of life theories hold true. So the brain eventually becomes so damaged it can no longer sustain life.
Okay.
And I see people all the time who have that very same concern. Usually it's somebody who's 99. Their family's like, they're going to live another 10 years. And the answer is no, they can't, because the brain is too damaged to sustain life.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for
Melody
everything.
says, I'm never calling in again, Glenda. That's what she
No,
said.
I didn't say that.
Melody, we missed you. I'm so glad
Oh,
to see
thank
you
you.
today, and thank you for
Thanks.
sharing your story.
At some point, you get a little weary of just focusing on this illness all the time.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
get
there
it.
all
It's
the
all
time.
consuming. I understand totally, Melody. I just wanted to express, I'm glad to see your face.
I'm very glad to
So,
be here. Thank
Let
you.
me show you a quick thing. Melanie, I learned this just a few months ago. Everybody put one hand on their forehead and put the other hand over your heart and shut your eye and take a deep breath. Do you feel a difference happen?
Kind of a peace that.
It's
goes
incredible,
through-
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a weird vagus nerve thing, but it just, it blew my mind when I did it the first time. I was like, wow, this is a cool trick.
And you know me, I'm a doubting Thomasina, so I didn't expect to feel anything, but there was a piece that just kind of.
Well, and you can
Run
also,
through you.
Glenda, go from forehead to heart and then down to stomach, because the brain is connected to the heart, the stomach, and then upper and lower digestion. And that's why when you and I get upset, our head starts pounding, our heart starts racing, our stomach begins churning, and then we have diarrhea. It's because all of that is connected. But this says everything's okay. I'm not going to fly to pieces right now, even as scared as I am. It's going to be okay. And then you can also put your hand on your stomach. Other things you can do, Glenda, that sound really weird is stomp your feet. To actually stomp your feet, even in a moment of feeling so overwhelmed, but stomping your feet helps your body, again, come back to itself of, I'm here, I can control this, I can handle this, I'm in charge of this. You can do things like lay down on the bed or lay down on the couch and look up and think about what it was that was bothering you, because just by changing your point of view, instead of looking out this way, but looking up that way, tells your brain to calm down, that it's going to be okay. One of my favorite tricks, Glenda, is going to the refrigerator, to the freezer, and taking out ice, taking the ice to the sink, and then wrapping the ice tightly in my hand, shutting my eyes and taking 10 deep breaths. That very quickly calms us down. You know, I see stuff all the time that says, here's ways for caregivers to calm down, but they involve things like going to the movies and, you know, taking a weekend cruise. And most of the caregivers I know just want to take a nap. So I look for things that can, in just a few seconds or just a few minutes, help you. And one of those, and something we don't think about, Glenda, is hydration. Staying hydrated helps you during this disease. It helps your body. I see you sitting there drinking. So here's how you check yourself for hydration and dehydration, is I have to lean forward. So I put my thumb right here between my eyebrows and I'm pushing really hard, Glenda, so that I can feel my skull behind me. When I remove my thumb, I'm going to do so very quickly, and I'm looking for a white flash to be under where my thumb is. And so if I move and there was a white flash, it means that I need to drink fluid. That's also how you can check a loved one with dementia, because this doesn't work on old white people. We don't have any snap in our skin, but this does. So the way I can quickly check your loved one is I just ask, can I press your forehead? And I do this, count to 5 and look at their forehead. And if there's a spot, they need fluid. And it's the same for us.
Whoa.
Yeah. Big things to help today that really do help is to write a letter to yourself about what an incredible caregiver you've been. Some of you have had, you know, Glenda, I met this family one time. I decided they probably were a bunch of drinkers, but they swore that their mother came to them and said, children, something's wrong with my brain. Come with me to the doctor. And after they went to the doctor, she said, children, the doctor has confirmed it. Now let us go to the elder law attorney. Then after the elder law attorney, the lady said, I'm buying you kids lunch. And then we're off to the bank to change all the money into y'all's hands. And then at the end, she said, let us go to the tax office and go ahead and get all of these deeds done. Yeah, that happens. Like that family either were all drinking or, you know, that just doesn't happen for everybody. A lot of you are dealing with somebody who's paranoid. A lot of you are dealing with somebody that you're literally having to wait for the 911 call so that you can get them to a hospital, so that they can get to a geriatric psych unit, so that they can get their medicine stable, so that you can then get them into nursing care. Some of you have got to get your ducks in a row. Some of you have got to put your foot down and tell your children, I need help. Some of you are going to have to figure out a way to use finances sparingly, and maybe every 3 months your loved one goes to a nursing home for 2 weeks to give you a respite stay, to give you a respite area. Maybe you don't want them to go to a community. You might hire a caregiver, although I can tell you if you hire a professional group, that's 24 hours, $24 a day. I mean, an hour times 24 times, it becomes incredibly expensive. Whereas at a nursing home or a memory care community, they charge you a per day fee, which would be like being at the hotel for the day. So much different fees. Some of you are just going to have a person very pleasant. Some of you are going to have a person who's very challenging. But what you have to do is realize they're not really aware of what's happening to them. If you're on this call, your loved one is probably past the letter that Glenda read at the beginning. If you're on this call, your loved one's probably at least in stage 5 of the disease. And it means making preparations for how are you going to survive the disease. And Glenda, I never know anything about how the legal stuff works, but I know you know how some things in Texas work. So I know there's a ladybird deed or a bluebonnet deed. I don't know if it's named after Lady Bird. I don't know about the ladybird, but you do.
Karen knows. I guess Karen may be in Texas too, but yes, ladybird deed. And we're talking about assets here. And, you know, I can't say this strongly enough. And I bet you, because I see your names, most of you have been on our calls. This isn't your first rodeo, so to say. You know that you've got to get those documents in order earlier rather than later. And so I encourage you to check that out. You can put ladybird deed in the Google search and it'll come up and tell you what that is. But it's about transferring assets and taking care of, you know, what you need to take care of early on. And that goes for all of the other legal documents that you know about also, medical power of attorney, all of that.
Glenda, I ran into somebody this weekend who insisted a man had a company and for $4,000, he would get them their Medicaid, Medicare coverage. And all the rest of their assets would just go into the wife's name and nothing would be said. And my thought is there's no such thing. The federal government's going to get their money. And I said, call the Area Agency on Aging and ask them.
That was a good referral. And the fact is, if you're going into Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid, they have a look back period. And so if you transfer any of your assets during that look back period, they're going to charge you just like you still have that asset in your control.
I tried to explain to the family that anybody wanting $4,000 and then they can guarantee you a government program. I said, if the Area Agency on Aging can't do it, he's just getting $4,000.
That's right. If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. Those are no truer words than in our society today, when every day, and I know all of you are getting these too. You're getting emails, you're getting phone calls, and I would say probably 99.9% of them are scams. And so take care of yourself and don't let that happen to you. We have about 4 minutes left. I wanted to look at the calendar real quick and tell you what's coming up, but I also wanted to ask you while I'm thinking about it, was this kind of call helpful to you with Dr. Tam? I think so, just from listening to your questions and your conversations, because I would like to, I'm putting her on the spot, see Dr. Tam do this, you know, maybe once every 6 months, maybe more than that. I don't know, Tam, because, you know, everybody's situation is so different and progresses at a different rate. I don't know, but I'd like to see that we present this again if you think it's important to you and other caregivers. And I see heads shaking. And so, yes. All right. Well, all right. I'm going to make sure that happens. And doesn't matter what you think, Tam, we're going to get you on doing this again.
Okay. Well, we'll just do the support group thing then.
I like it. I like it. And I think it's so helpful.
I think that would be grand. And then, any tools that we have, I think are on the website. I
Yeah.
would like to ask everyone, Glenda, if you could put this in your little bar thingy, or Minerva, self-compassion.org. self-compassion.org. That is Kristen Neff's website at the University of Texas. And Dr. Neff is a guru of self-compassion. So Glenda, you go to that website and you scroll down until you find where it says to test yourself. And then go ahead and give yourself the test. And what you'll find out is you're not, more than likely, you may not be as nice to yourself as you would to a total stranger, or as you would to your best friend who could be going through the same thing you are. And so taking her test is a wonderful way to determine if you need to have a conversation with your physician about doing better to be taking care of you. Because always in the back of the caregiver's mind has to be, if something happens to me, who will step up to take care? And for some of us, we know it's evil grandson who only wants grandpa's medication. For others, we know it's a sibling who will step up. It's a child who will step up. But for others, that's a frightening question.
Yeah.
In my family, I have no doubt it would involve weapons in the sheriff's department. Linda, I'm just going to throw that out there.
I laugh because Tam and I have talked about her family and my family. And so, that's why it was funny. Well, I did read all of your comments there. And I see that Minerva has put that website up there, the self-compassion, Dr. Neff, and I will put that up in the follow-up email, as well as how you can get in touch with our dear Dr. Tam Cummings. She actually will talk to you on the telephone. You just have to leave her a message and she'll get back to you, because she is traveling around doing presentations and helping people. And that's what I love about her. She's helping people, and that's what we're trying to do here. Any closing words, Dr. Tam?
This finger stopped working earlier today, and it's that middle finger. And so I think arthritis is hurting. So if anybody's having aches and pains, there's got to be some weather, something going on.
Yeah.
This finger's not working.
That's right. Those in my.
Everybody take your arthritis medicine.
Well, you
And
always
remember,
said that.
use it or lose it means body and brain. Bless you, Glenda. Body and brain. I ran into a teenager the other day. They thought that meant just playing video games for their brain. I was like, no, it's body and brain. Use it or lose it. So everybody take care of themselves.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad to be back with you. It means so much to me, and I learn so much every time that we get together and have one of these sessions. So thank you for taking time out of your day. You will receive a follow-up email if you register for today's call. If not, I have already put in our customer service representative number early in the chat, and you can call her and get the information from her. Thank you so much again. Take care of yourselves. Dr. Tam, take care of you in the windy hill country, and we'll see you on our next call. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye, Melody.
Bye.